220,000 landlords are quitting buy-to-let in 2026 because of the Renters' Right Act. As this video goes out today, the 1st of May 2026, the Renters' Right Act has come into play. These 220,000 landlords aren't just quitting because buy-to-let is dead, as the mainstream media say. They're quitting because they don't know how to play the game. In this video, I'm going to show you and give you the 25-step checklist that I have created that will separate the landlords that are going to make money in the next 10 years against the ones that are selling today. We'll cover in this video why the headlines about the Renters' Right Act are predominantly wrong and why people are selling up for reasons that aren't completely to do with the new legislation. I have been investing in property over the last 10 years, and yes, the waters have been choppy, and yes, things have changed, but the best landlords that I have seen who have continued success are the ones that don't read the headlines and act on data, which is hopefully you watching this video. If you're interested in property and watching this video, you have probably spoken to these types of people. The accountant has told you that Section 24 has ruined it. The mate down the pub is selling his buy-to-let. The letting agent says getting rid of Section 21 is the worst thing that's ever happened to the industry. And the mortgage broker is slightly worried about what Donald Trump is doing in Iran and the increasing oil prices. And you've read the headlines, and predominantly the headlines say buy-to-let is over and you should get out. Now, as a slightly contrarian thinker, normally when someone's shouting so loudly about it being a bad thing, I'd like to have a little look at the data, potentially swim against the tide, because I think there's opportunities when people are trying to go in the opposite direction. So what I'd like to do is show you exactly what's happening, show you a bit of the data, and show you really what's happening in the Renters' Right Act and how we can stay above the law and get ahead. 220,000 rental homes are leaving the UK rental market in 2026. That is not a made-up stat. That is a figure from Pepper Money, who are a specialist buy-to-let lender in the UK. They reckon 65,000 of those homes that are exiting the buy-to-let market are to do with the Renters' Right Act coming in today. And we need to look at who's actually selling. It's predominantly the accidental landlords that came in and got lucky. The people that bought the homes and then moved in with their spouses or partners and then rented out their first home or whatever the second home that it was. They had it in their own name, they're getting hammered by Section 24 tax. That's been a problem for a little while. And then now you have to do a lot more work and run property as a professional business. You can't be an accidental side hustle type landlord where you don't do things properly. And the Section 24 tax and the Renters' Right Bill and the extra friction that there is in property is starting to push those landlords out. They're predominantly a landlord with one, maybe two properties with no system. They've not managed the property very well. They've not increased the rents in line with it. They've not even looked after the home that well. And they've had the good old days and they're now looking to get out of that market and get out and even crystallize some of those gains they've made over the last sort of 10 or 20 years as property prices have risen. So what we're seeing isn't necessarily a market collapse, we're seeing a market clean out, a passing of property from a different generation to another and a different way of running and managing that business. And here's another bit that matters though when we're looking at UK rental stock. UK rental supply was already 33% lower than 10 years ago. Again, predominantly down to Section 24 tax and these accidental landlords and people owning it in their own name leaving the market. So we were already pretty stretched on rental stock. So losing another 220,000 rental homes, which is about 5% of the rental stock in the UK, is not good news for people wanting to rent and for people that are wanting to rent at an affordable price. Supply is down, demand is exactly where it was, if not a little bit up. And you don't need an economics degree to know what that does to rents. Supply low, demand high, you can do the maths. So the people that are going to pick up this slack and potentially profit well from this are the landlords that are doing it well, that are running their businesses properly and providing good stock into the market. So how do you run it properly, especially when it comes to the Renters' Right Act? So I'm going to walk you through some of the steps on the sheet. But if you're enjoying this video and you're finding some of it useful, please click on like and click on subscribe and follow this. And spoiler alert, if you want the free guide, the link is in the bio. Please click on it. You can download it and use it. And I'm going to show you how simple and how beautiful looking it is. Okay, so here I have and the link is below in the bio, as I've just mentioned, the 25-step checklist that you need. And I've broken it down into parts. So before we even consider letting, we need to understand what we are letting. Predominantly, I look at vanilla buy-to-lets, and in this video, that is what we're going to focus on. There are certain elements of this checklist that we do not need. However, first one, if you are a residential homeowner, have a residential mortgage, and you are going to move in with your spouse or partner, and you just want to rent out your original home, you need to check with your lender that you have consent to let. It's a very simple process. You ring them up, say, I want to let it out. And normally, if it's your first one and your only one, they'll just say, yes, that's fine. Thanks for letting us know. So you can check and tick that sheet. If you are looking at HMOs, you'll need a license, but also in certain areas for buy-to-lets, you will need selective licensing. There are certain areas in the country you might need to pay £1,000 over 3 years. It's a little bit of a niggle, that one, but you need to check that one. You need to look at EPCs, gas certificates, electrical installation certificates, smoke alarms, furniture, if you're providing furniture, and buildings and landlord insurance. So they are the first checks. These are important when we are looking and starting out, that we always cover these bases. And none of this is new. None of this is new in the Renters' Rights Act. You should have been doing this from the start. So the headlines of how scary and bad it is, this is new. Okay, when you found your tenant, you have managed to vet them well, you've put it out to market, you have an application or two. This is the next part, and it's also the part where there's a couple of newer bits. You need to do the right to rent check. It's something on the Direct Gov website. If they're not a UK citizen, you need to have a right to rent check done. It is a very simple process. You need your tenancy agreement. It's your AST normally, or it has been known as your AST, or a written statement of terms if you are not providing an AST. So if it is a sort of more loose agreement between someone you know and family, you just at least need a written statement of terms. That is a new thing. You need to put your deposits in the DPS, in a deposit protection scheme. That has always been the case. The how to rent guide always needs doing anyway, and something you can download and give. This is one of the newer bits, and something you need to do if you do have a tenant now. You need to provide them this in writing, as in print out and hand over, and or download it and email it to them. You can't just send them the link. That is absolutely important, and this can get you a £7,000 fine. But the Renters' Rights Act information sheet, you need to provide this every time and provide it in the form that I've just mentioned. Super important. An inventory you need to do, always needed to, meter readings and key handover. All these things you need to do prior. All these things are super key, and they've always been super key, because if you ever come to a disagreement and the tenant might need moving on through the courts, which hopefully never happens and very rarely does happen, by the way, you will need all this information. You need to show that you've given it at the beginning. Now that brings me to the one point that has changed in the Renters' Rights Act. Section 21 has been abolished. Now Section 21 is the no fault eviction, where you might have needed to move on a tenant for no fault. You just wanted to get your property back and you could just serve a notice with no reason. That has gone. That is the biggest change probably in the Renters' Rights Act. However, there is still Section 8, and there are lots of reasons and ways in Section 8 to evict a tenant if you have to go through the court process. Now, 9 times out of 10, if you have vetted the tenant well, you look after the product and you look after the customer, you will never, ever, ever go down a court route. If you provide a good product to a good person, 9.5 times out of 10, you aren't going to have these issues. Now, we do all this because we are good landlords, and we do all this so if anything, the worst does happen, we can provide this to the courts and help with eviction. There are lots of ways to manage these new legislations, so do not read the headline, Section 21 is abolished, the world is over, because that is not true. I'm going to skim through the next part of the 25-step guide, which you can see on your screen now, where we're going to talk about ongoing management. We need to look after the customer. We need to look after our property and the product that we have provided. So we need to make sure we have a maintenance plan and emergency contact set up. We need to do periodic inspections. I've recommended quarterly. You can do them 6 months. You can do them annually. It does not matter too much, especially if you have good communication with the tenant. Gas safety certificate has to be done every 12 months. That is absolutely crucial. You need to do smoke and CO2 alarm tests regularly. The damp and mold risk assessment, you need to do one of those. That is a new thing to do with Awab's law, where a landlord did not look after their property very well. There was mold, and unfortunately a young gent died. It is important that you have a good product where you don't have mold in the property and you have periodic inspections to make sure this is done, and you do the risk assessments accordingly. This, if you are a good person and watching this video, should never ever be an issue, but is something that you need to keep an eye on. And then you can only do rent increases now via a Section 13 notice, and you serve that notice 2 months in advance, and you can only do that once a year, but you can do it in line with market rent. Previously, you could only raise rent 8% per year. Now you can do it in line with market rent. So what other rental properties are going for in the area, that is what you can charge for. So if it has gone up quite a lot, you can charge that rent, and it is important that you increase periodically and regularly. Do not think my tenant is a good tenant, I'm not going to increase that rent. You've got to run it like a business, and you have to manage that. So if interest rates rise or if anything goes wrong, you have that buffer and you have managed that property properly. And at the end of the tenancy, we check out everything against the original inventory that we did, and we return the deposit via the DPS scheme within 10 days of them leaving. Very simple process. Click one button, it gets sent back to them. I have created this spreadsheet to help people like yourself that hopefully are still watching this video, and you can have it for free and go through. You can print this out, you can reset it, you can tick it for each property that you may or may not have, and as long as you are a good landlord and you do stuff properly, the Renters' Right Act is definitely not a problem. The one point that I really need to make clear as well, though, that if you do have a tenanted property, even if it is a renting to a cousin or a friend or someone you know or a family member, it is important to look at point 14 on the list. You need to give the tenants the government information sheet, and you cannot just send the link. You need to download it and either send it in an email or print it out and give it to them, or do both just to cover your back, and document and evidence that. You can get a fine of up to £7,000 for not doing that. So it's not worth taking the risk for a simple exercise. So if you've been told the Renters' Right Act is the death of buy-to-let, it is not. It is just a clean out. Run the 25 steps that I've given you today, and I promise you that you will be thanking me in 10 years' time when you are sat on a very profitable and very well run property portfolio. The landlords that are selling this year aren't selling because buy-to-let is dead. They are selling because they never ran it as a proper property business. And that is what you've got to do. If you need any more help, please click on one of the links below and book a call with me and my team, and we can help you in property get further than you are now. If not, I'll see you in the next video.